RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
Thank you so much for joining us after a week that has been both incredible and heartbreaking. And we start with the heartbreaking news. That ambush of police officers in Dallas, 12 officers shot, 5 officers killed at a Black Lives Matter protest there. Those officers gunned down by at least one sniper hidden in the second floor of a college building. The police chief saying that the gunman told them he wanted to kill white people and white police officers. The ambush took place in the wake of this week's well-publicized police killings of 2 black men, Alton Sterling in Baton Rouge, after he'd been wrestled to the ground by officers, and Philando Castile, shot during a traffic stop as he sat in his car, his girlfriend live streaming the aftermath. On Thursday, before the attack in Dallas, Congressman Andre Carson called for a Bill of Rights for victims of police violence, including independent investigations and autopsies. He also says the American people are losing their faith that officers who cross the line will be held accountable, including those who kill unarmed suspects.
But I know that the pull is strong to stand up for fellow police officers, to give them the benefit of the doubt and to protect them from accusations. But I stand here today as a former police officer, but most importantly as a black man, to say that enough is enough. As a cop, I find this revolting. Now, these shooters weren't my brothers in blue. They're murderers, and they should be treated as such. No cop, no prosecutor, judge, or jury should stand up for a cop who kills an innocent person in cold blood.
We want to welcome in Congressman Andre Carson. Now, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Your reaction to the violence that we saw play out in Dallas overnight on Thursday?
Well, it was unfortunate. I think many of the protests across the country, one in which I took part in Thursday night, me and other members of Congress, they were peaceful protests. And I think it's unacceptable to put human beings in harm's way, let alone police officers in harm's way. And it is clear that whenever you have movements that want to call attention to the rampant incidences of police brutality throughout our country, there could possibly be people who have ill motivations and who are unwell, who want to capitalize on the numbers and the attention that these kinds of movements are drawing and cause harm to others. And I condemn those acts, and we are praying for those police officers, but we're still praying for the victims of police brutality as well.
These are not mutually exclusive ideas, that we can have compassion for police officers all across the country and be concerned about issues of police overreach right now. You, along with the Congressional Black Caucus, calling for this Victims' Bill of Rights. Why now?
Well, I think now is the time. I think now is the time to ensure that victims and their families receive due process. I think in many cases you have prosecutors whose cases are being fed by police officers. So there has to be a greater amount of scrutiny, not just on elected officials, but on prosecutors and police officers as well. And so the question becomes, how do we leverage our voting bloc as concerned citizens across the political ideologies, Republican, Democrat, Independent, and say enough is enough? And now, more than ever, it's a presidential election year. It's time for us to call to action. That's why these movements are so critically important, so we can work with our friends in the media, and thank God for social media as well as traditional media outlets, because now more than ever we're getting instantaneous feedback and real-time experiences as to what's happening and what people have been complaining about for years. We saw several young men who were shot violently, unacceptably so, by police officers. But then again, we had a chance to see sick individuals target police officers and shoot down those who have sworn themselves to protect us each and every day. And we're at a critical point in our country. We cannot allow or elect elected officials who fan the flames of bigotry, of xenophobia, and we cannot allow individuals to capitalize on the growing disillusionment in our country to use that as justification to attack police officers.
To that end, presumptive Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump has said that this is a divided nation calling for peace. Your thoughts on his recent comments?
Well, I think that Mr. Trump is trying to capitalize on his popularity. But at the same time, Mr. Trump is going to have to demonstrate some policy depth. He can't wing himself through this process. This is the highest position not only in the land, but arguably in the entire world. And so we don't need leaders who are winging it and winging their way through leadership. That is not how leadership works. We need consensus builders. We need someone who will surround themselves with the right advisors, someone who is very thoughtful, someone who is in tune to the disillusionment on the ground, as it were. I think that person is Secretary Clinton.
These unjustified police shootings, are these rare cases or are they evidence of a larger systemic failure?
Larger systemic failure. I think we talk about recruitment, we can talk about training, we can talk about what goes on in police academies and things that are reinforced in police departments. But as a former cop, I started off as a special deputy with the Marion County Sheriff's Department, and then Excise Police, and then Department of Homeland Security, and back to the Sheriff's Department, ironically. But I think that most police officers, probably 99% of police officers, white, black, rich, poor, no matter the background, are there to do the job. They're there because they made a commitment to serve and protect, and they mean it. They go out wanting to come back home to their families and their spouses and their children. I think that's reflective of most police officers. It doesn't take away the human element, our inclination to discriminate without cause, our inclination to be prejudiced. But those inclinations cannot be reinforced and concretized in a real sense by our departments. And so I think that we need to bolster our citizens or review boards and citizens academies and bring in people and make city executives more accountable, make state executives more accountable, make city councils more accountable, state legislatures, Congress more accountable, and so we can have greater oversight, which is one of the meaningful things, and I'm honored to serve in the Intelligence Committee because we need levels of accountability in overseeing the over 17 intelligence enterprises that impact our society largely. We want to make sure that we don't have governmental overreach as we've seen in the past.
Our thanks to the congressman. Still to come, the week's other major story is Governor Pence leaving his race for re-election to join Donald Trump's campaign. Our full coverage of that is next. You're watching Indianapolis This Week, only on RTV6. Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week as we turn now to Governor Mike Pence's future. Pence has spent the week publicly running for re-election here in 4th of July parades, at county fairs, at restaurants, but he's also openly auditioning as the potential running mate for Donald Trump after the two met privately in New Jersey last weekend. Pence now believed to be one of the top finalists for the job.
I hope that Donald Trump is the next president of the United States, and wherever he wants me to campaign with him in Indiana or anywhere else. Now, I'm ready, willing, and able to help Donald Trump anywhere he asks us to help him. I think it's important for every Republican to get on board with Donald Trump. I truly do believe that we need a new direction in Washington, D.C.
And let's bring in ABC News political director Rick Klein. Rick, thanks so much for joining us today.
Happy to be with you, Jason.
Speculation swirling in Indiana right now. If he were asked and if he were to accept, what would Governor Mike Pence bring to the ticket with Donald Trump being his running mate?
Mike Pence would bring immediate credibility among conservatives. He is someone that checks virtually all the boxes that conservatives might be interested in. A former member of House leadership, of course, a governor of an important Midwestern, potentially a battleground state, and someone who has walked the walk and talked the talk with social conservatives, a true member of their community. He is someone that would bring heft to Donald Trump in an area of one of his biggest weaknesses.
For moderate, undecided voters, though, does Governor Mike Pence move the needle?
I I think he would point to his record as governor as something that would at least be evidence, a piece of evidence for him to offer to those kind of moderate voters. I think mostly what it would do potentially with voters out there in Indiana and well beyond throughout the upper Midwest potentially is you would be signaling that this guy is for real. He is choosing, for all of the heated rhetoric, choosing someone with established leadership credentials in Congress and as a governor. That, I think, is what you'd be looking for if he goes in the direction of Mike Pence.
Is it safe to say at this point that Governor Mike Pence is the favorite to join Donald Trump, or is he simply in the mix?
I think it's hard to say that there's a favorite when he's auditioning just about every day someone else for this job. I think Mike Pence is part of a pretty short list of people who are being seriously considered, not more than 4 or 5. But inside that list, it really is up to Mr. Trump by himself to make that decision. And I think it's hard to handicap inside of that. I do know he is intrigued by Mike Pence. He likes the fact that even when he endorsed his opponent, Ted Cruz, in the Indiana primary, he didn't make it personal. And that sort of pulling off a punch, I think, matters to Trump, matters to the Trump campaign. By all accounts, they had a cordial meeting over the weekend, and I think he helped his stock a little bit. But I don't know that that makes him the top contender. He is certainly, though, in the mix of the top tier.
Does the fact that the governor, of course, is in a tight re-election campaign in Indiana right now, does that impact any of this from the Republican standpoint?
Well, the critical thing that it does is move the timeline up a little bit. As you know, Mike Pence will have to decide whether to remove himself from the ballot in Indiana before the Republican convention begins. So that essentially moves up by a few days the possibility, or if he's going to choose Pence, then it's going to happen in the early part, in the middle part of next week, because that's how you would have to get the wheels in motion to remove himself from the ballot in Indiana for governor. So I think it has a bit of a ripple effect there. But in terms of party control, I haven't talked to many Republicans who are particularly worried about that. It's a lot more important, for example, in the Senate, where you have party control, meaning everything. Republicans get a chance to regroup in Indiana if Pence isn't at the top of the ticket, and I think they'll like their chances maybe that much better on the presidential level.
A final question for you today. In general, this time around, how much could the running mates for both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump actually impact the outcome when we get to November?
For Donald Trump in particular, he hasn't made many public leadership decisions. This is the biggest decision he's making as candidate, probably of the entire campaign. So I think it speaks a little bit extra. Maybe a little less so for Hillary Clinton, because she is so well known and her time on the public stage has been. Look, I'm always of the school of thought that you care most about the running mate until the running mate is chosen. But I actually think that it's an important decision point for the candidates. There aren't many opportunities that someone like Donald Trump has to show his decision-making process, what might be his governing process, like he does right now with the Veep stakes as he decides on who his vice presidential nominee will be.
We'll see how the Veep stakes play out. ABC News political director Rick Klein, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you.
And the speculation over Trump's potential pick has captivated the attention of consultants, columnists, and pundits from coast to coast, including Republican strategist Matt Mackowiak, whom we caught up with in Texas over Skype.
So based on everything we're hearing and we're seeing and we're reading, it's clear that Trump's vice presidential shortlist has been growing in the past couple of weeks. That does not generally happen. Usually you start with a list of 10 or 15 people, you whittle it down to 3 to 5 people, and you choose among those people. It's pretty clear right now, and Trump said, I think yesterday to Fox News, that there's only 12 people on the list. Now, Bob Corker and Joni Ernst have effectively removed their names. There may be a couple others that remove their names. But at this point, it's getting down to who is truly viable, who has been vetted, who is Trump comfortable with, and who's the smartest choice. This is a decision that only Trump can make. He's getting advice from a lot of different corners. One of the advisors that has recently come on board is Kellyanne Conway, a New York City-based pollster who's been active in Republican politics for a long time. She actually ran one of the Ted Cruz super PACs. She's also been Mike Pence's pollster for a long time. So I think she's someone who can attest to what Pence would bring to the ticket. I think what probably appeals to Trump about Pence is that he offers a lot of the upside that Newt Gingrich would offer, but none of the downside. But keep in mind, Newt Gingrich isn't giving up anything, and Chris Christie's term limited as governor. So the risk to either of them running with Trump is very low. The risk for Pence, to me, is very high. If he's concerned he's not going to win re-election, I can understand not wanting to run and perhaps lose. I think he's a better than 50% chance of getting reelected. I think his chances of being reelected are higher than his chances of being elected vice president running with Trump this November, based on what we know today.
So will Trump pick Pence? Will Pence accept? And what happens if he does? Our political insider is standing by to talk about all of that next, right here on Indianapolis This Week on RTV6. And welcome back to Indianapolis This Week as we welcome in our political insiders, Mary Beth Schneider, of course, Kip 2, Marcus Barlow. Don't tell Laura and Abdul, Pete or Adam or all the rest, our finest panel of insiders here today.
I don't think they have to be told. I think they know.
Now they know. We're obviously in speculation mode at this point. Governor Pence, Donald Trump. Marcus, let's start with you. The odds that this could happen.
Yeah, I give it about a 60% chance, probably rising. I mean, I think that, you know, since Senator Joni Ernst came out and said that she thinks that he should choose Governor Pence, I think that, you know, a lot of the national talk has been around Governor Pence and his record in Indiana, and he just seems like a really attractive candidate for a national ticket.
Let's have some fun, Kip. Put on your Republican strategist cap for us, which I'm sure you wear.
One of those?
You wear very often.
Do you even have one?
Play the middle. What does Governor Pence bring to that ticket if he joins Donald
Trump? Well, actually, without having put on a Republican hat, I think he makes the most sense, which is why I think if it doesn't happen, that's why it won't happen, because Trump's not done anything that made any sense to me in quite a while. But I do think it makes some sense. Trump is probably vulnerable with Christian conservatives. He's vulnerable with social conservatives and fiscal conservatives, and Mike Pence hits all those marks. And in addition, Governor Pence has long experience in Washington, number 3 in Congress. Trump has said publicly that part of what he wants, he's looking for somebody inside Washington who knows how Washington runs. Of course, the downside of that is Mike Pence never passed a bill the entire time he was in Congress, so I don't know if he could get anything done.
He just took his Republican strategist stamp off.
Well, it's a fact. I mean, I have to say what facts are, and that's a fact. No, but I think he does help him, which is why I think Trump won't do it.
Mary Beth, what do you think the odds are on this?
I think it's lower than 60%, and partly because I don't see that he brings quite the attack dog, and
does Donald Trump need an attack dog?
Well,
right, I think
that Donald
role, yeah.
But I think Donald Trump really relates to that, and I think that he has maybe a better relationship with Newt Gingrich and with Donald Trump, and it all seems to be about some of these relationships. And for want of a better word, a sycophant. He seems to adore people who adore him, and it's hard to see Mike Pence quite filling that role of, oh, you know, he's just wonderful in everything he says. On the other hand, he does make sense, because what Trump, I think, does need is more help with the social conservatives, and Mike Pence gives that a seal of approval. But it's harder to see what this does for Mike Pence. Win or lose, he's in to be tied to every crazy thing that Donald Trump says. And it makes it harder, I think, for him, if he doesn't get it, to go on to November as the candidate for governor saying, you know, I really wanted to be governor, not Veep. I think it puts him in a bad position.
Are there some Indiana Republicans right now that would gladly have Mike Pence jump on board?
Most.
With Donald Trump?
Oh, I think that's a little bit strong.
I think most. I mean, you already have 4 people hotly pursuing.
At least 4.
4, I think 4 serious candidates who are hotly pursuing him getting the heck out of town, and that is Brian Bosma, Susan Brooks, Eric Holcomb, and Todd Rokita. Those 4 people, I think, are serious candidates. They're already making calls. They're talking to everybody, so they're all thinking this is a done deal.
Too.
Well, you can throw your boss in.
Yeah, we've got our Republican strategist over here. Let's go back to Marcus. If this all happens, who do you think takes over for the Republicans?
You know what? That's really hard to predict. I think that our probably best candidate has no reason to do it because he's about to be elected U.S. Senator. And so I think anyone else, I mean, it's going to be kind of an uphill climb, like to get into and get recognized statewide. I think it's easy for us in Indianapolis to talk about Central Indiana candidates, but I think statewide we have our congressional delegation is filled with people that are qualified and could fulfill that role. I think that, you know, there's going to be a lot of horse trading and very quick campaigning should Governor Pence end up on the national ticket.
So you think Todd Young's a better candidate than Susan Brooks?
Yeah, I think you just said that.
I think that Todd Young has run a statewide primary campaign, but I mean, I think right now, if you were going to talk about organization and talk about someone that's traveled the state and spoken to voters statewide, it would be Todd Young.
Maybe,
well,
but
Eric Holcomb has as well. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Eric Holcomb has as well.
He did,
He ran
correct.
for Senate,
Yep.
finished third and had to drop out, and now he's lieutenant governor, so he makes some sense there.
And he's
the
been
key is going to
campaigning.
be what happens to Mike Pence's money. I mean, the key in this campaign, if Pence leaves, what happens to that money? Because whoever gets put in the position is going to have a lot of money fast, or they won't be competitive.
Our producer's freaking out. 20 seconds apiece now. If this doesn't happen, how much has this impacted Pence's chances of being reelected as governor? Mary Beth?
Actually, in the end, I don't think it'll affect it one way or another. I think the election hinges on other issues.
I think it hurts him.
I think it has no effect.
We'll see how that all plays out. Kip 2, Marcus Barlow, Mary Beth Schneider. Our apologies to Abdul and Lara and Adam and Pete and the rest. Thanks so much for being here. Join us right now on Facebook and Twitter, our new Facebook page there, Twitter as well, at Indy This Week. Updates and news every day of the week. You're watching Indianapolis This Week only on RTV6. And welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. As you travel this weekend, you're going to see flags flying at half-staff all across Indiana and across the country as well, including at the White House there, mourning those officers killed in that ambush in Dallas. We also want to share this image with you from our Scripps station in Cincinnati, a powerful one shared so many times on social media the past few days, talking about the shootings that have happened across the country, including Dallas and Orlando. Simply stated, all blood is red. Thank you so much for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. We'll continue to be on top of the Trump VP search all week long. Raphael, Katie, and our entire team, have a fantastic Sunday, everyone.